Good morning. Well, it's happened again. And the Waffle House Massacre in Nashville once again taught us important lessons. And yeah, the lessons are about gun control in this country and why it doesn't work. And this case was way different because we have had so many cases of law enforcement dropping the ball and letting mentally ill people buy guns legally, get guns, and they knew they were a problem and did nothing about it. In this case, it's a completely different scenario because this 29-year-old monster was well known all over the country, actually, all the way from his hometown in Illinois to Washington, D.C., to the FBI and the Secret Service. He was well known, and he was legally banned from buying or owning any weapons. He had quite a history. At one point, he was in a parking lot with a gun to his head, saying he was going to kill himself because the singer Taylor Swift was stalking him. Okay? Then last summer, he was arrested at the White House. Yes, the People's House, threatening the President of the United States. He was arrested, and the FBI went to his house in Illinois, confiscated all of his weapons, including the AR-15 he used to massacre 4 innocent people and injure several others, just this past week. They took all his weapons, they pulled his license, they alerted every gun shop. He was on the national database. He was not to be sold a weapon. Guess what happened? He got his weapons. His weapons. How, you ask? Well, the FBI took them and gave them to his daddy. And this monster's daddy gave them back to Sonny Boy. Now, there's been a lot of talk over the last few days. Luckily, they've caught this monster, and he didn't get to hurt anybody else. But now there's the question of, should they charge the father? And I say, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I watch enough Law and Order. And you might say, well, it's a TV show. No, it's ripped from the headlines. And they have Westlaw as they know their shit. This father is complicit? Complicit? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Yet. He aided and abetted his son in a mass murder. Now, let's just think about this from the father's standpoint, okay? Let's forget that his son was a danger to innocent other people. His son had tried to commit suicide with a gun. Now, you all who are out there who are parents, would you give your child who had tried to shoot themselves, would you give them an AR-15? Here, baby, those nasty government people, they didn't have a right to take those guns. Those are your guns. Here you go. You can have them back now. I mean, my God, he doesn't get Parent of the Year. You know, some children with mental illness cut themselves as a cry for help. They injure themselves. They use razor blades and anything. Would you give your child who's a cutter a pack of razor blades in their Christmas stocking? Of course you wouldn't. So you can just forget for the moment about the innocent people that this person was allowed to kill because of what his father did by giving him his guns back, because he couldn't get a gun legally. Now you might say, well, he could have stolen one, but that's not what he did. And it would have been harder. But his daddy made it easy for him. Here's your AR-15 back, son. Go with God. Knowing his son was mentally ill, knowing he was suicidal, at the very least, that father put his own son in danger of killing himself. Not to mention the innocent people that were killed because of this father's actions. So yes, we need to send a message, because obviously in this situation, our gun laws worked. He was identified as a threat. He was banned from owning a weapon. His weapons were confiscated. His license to own a weapon was pulled, and gun shops were notified. No gun shop sold him a weapon. But he didn't need that. He just had to go see his daddy. And daddy's like, here's your guns back, son. Bad government. Taking my mentally ill son who thinks Taylor Swift is stalking him. You need to have a gun to protect yourself from Taylor Swift. This dad, for all we know, they say that mental illness is hereditary. Maybe the father's as crazy as the son. But we need to send a message to other family members, friends, who are going to help out a buddy or a kid or a brother or a cousin and give them their guns back after the government says you are not stable, you are mentally ill. And see, everybody who pushes the Second Amendment, they're like, well, we don't want mentally ill people to have guns either. That's why we need this message to be sent by charging the father. And money talks. And I'm going to do a show about this tomorrow, about how people who have been acquitted of crimes get sued in civil court and end up owing a lot of money to the victims, even though they were found not guilty by a jury. I don't know how much money this family has. I'm assuming not a lot. But whatever they have needs to be taken and given to the victims to pay their medical bills, those who are in the hospital, to pay funeral expenses, to pay punitive damages. Anything that this family owns needs to be taken from them and given to their sons' victims. Send a message. Send a message that you don't get to help a crazy person kill innocent people. Hey, this kid wanted to kill himself, go for it. 4 innocent people would be alive right now if he pulled that trigger in that parking lot, running from Taylor Swift, please. But let's make sure that all the guilty parties here are prosecuted. The government did their job. The state of Illinois did their job. The FBI did their job. The Secret Service did their job. The father failed this person, this monster that he created. And then he helped him out by handing him his weapons. Shame. But let's go further than shame. Let's punish the father. We all know that if you are in a car and your passenger gets out of that car and kills somebody, you are as guilty of the murder as they are. Let's make sure that this father pays for those 4 innocent lives lost. I want to talk real quick about the hero, James Shaw Jr. Awesome. Remember how the Second Amendment people go, a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun? Well, guess what? James Shaw Jr. didn't have a gun. He didn't have a knife. He didn't have any weapon at all. He just wanted to live. And he jumped the gunman and wrestled that AR-15 away from him with his bare hands. He didn't need a gun. And he saved a lot of lives. And there was something else you should know about James Shaw Jr. He's a hero, and he happens to be black. And the shooter, as we know, was white. And there was a comment, and I think it's worth talking about, since we talked about the Starbucks incident in Philadelphia last week, that if James Shaw Jr., a well-dressed black man, had gone to the Starbucks in Philadelphia, sat down, and the shooter, a white man, had gone to the same Starbucks and sat down, both were waiting for a friend, both asked to use the bathroom, guess who would have walked out in handcuffs? Yeah, the hero black dude. Yeah. He would have been more likely to be arrested than the maniacal, maniac, crazy dude that shot up a lot of people at Waffle House. That's an interesting thing to think about. It's important. Let's talk again about mental health because it's so important. I just saw a show on the news on Monday night about a couple who had a severely mentally disturbed child, and they tried to get him help. And guess what they found out? That a child as young as 12 can refuse mental health treatment. This boy at 13 was in a mental health facility and checked himself out. He said, I don't want to be here. I'm going home. And the facility called his parents, and his parents said, no, we want him to stay. He needs help. He's going to hurt himself or someone else. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. If you don't come get him, we're going to pack his bags and put him out on the street. So they went and got him. And again, he was hearing voices, talking to himself, making inappropriate behavior. And they tried again, and he kept refusing help. And even though he was under the age of 18, he was able to refuse treatment. And the last time he refused treatment, he went home and he killed himself. The mental health system failed this family. That's a very sad situation. And is it any wonder that we have mentally ill, dangerous people walking our streets unmedicated, under no treatment whatsoever? Because as I said to you on many shows before, mentally ill people think there's something wrong with all of us. We're the crazy ones. And they're normal. And what they hear in their heads is normal. They like the voices they hear. They don't want to take pills and make them go away. Those are their friends telling them to shoot up a movie theater or a school or a Waffle House. That's scary. That is really scary. And it's time that we understand that mental illness isn't cancer. I am all for even a 15 or 16-year-old saying, I don't want chemotherapy. I think that's up to them because it's their body. They're the ones who are going to go through the torture. And if they don't want it, the state, the government should not be able to force them to do it. That should be up to them and their families. But when you are mentally ill, and you have a mentally ill child, they are not only a danger to themselves, they are a danger to all of us. They are the reason that we have to think twice before we go to a concert, before we go to a movie theater, a nightclub, before we send our children to school, before we go to church, and now before we go to a Waffle House for breakfast. They are the reason. The common thread of most of these mass shootings, and it goes all the way back to Columbine, those boys were mentally ill. They weren't right. The common thread is not just the AR-15s, which again, I don't see why any human being needs an AR-15 for any reason. But it's also mental illness is the common thread. And it makes sense to logical people, people who are not mentally ill, because only a crazy person would put 200 rounds in a gun and walk into a place and shoot up people they never even met. You've got to be crazy to do that. Now let's talk about the AR-15 real quick, because once again, I know the Second Amendment folks are going to come out in droves. How dare you? You want to take our guns. No, I don't want to take your guns. I really don't. I don't give a shit if you've got 20 hunting rifles and 30 handguns. I don't care. I don't understand why you need an AR-15. You certainly don't need it to hunt, because we've already established that if you hunt with an AR-15, you get no meat because it explodes. The animal explodes. Unless you like your meat in cubes, you don't get any food out of it. So you can't hunt with an AR-15. They say it's bad for target shooting. Again, I've never fired one. My husband has in the military, and he says they're not good for target shooting. They're not accurate. What AR-15s are good for, the only thing they're good for, is killing a lot of people in a short amount of time without having to reload. That's why the military uses them. That's what they're good for. You walk into a Waffle House with an AR-15, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, because you just start spraying and you're going to hit something. You try to defend your home with an AR-15, and your wife might have a problem with you the day after. Because, yeah, you might kill the intruder, but you're also going to shoot up your house. Oh, my God, Aunt Lila's vase, it was in the family for 40 years. You blew it away. I've told you before, if you are going to defend your home from a trespasser or an intruder, you need one bullet, and it better count, because if it doesn't, you're likely to be killed with your own gun. You don't need a 200-round magazine to take down an intruder, and if you do, you're going to be dead. You'll be dead. And if you do manage to hit the intruder, because you're spraying your entire house with AR-15 bullets, guess what's going to happen? You're going to need a serious remodel. So just think about that. And think about this. Nobody wants to keep sane, law-abiding people from getting a gun. Nobody. I don't. I have a gun. I'm a safe, responsible gun owner. I don't have 50 guns because I wouldn't know what the hell to do with them. I don't understand why you need an AR-15. And if somebody, other than the fact that the government is going to fly over your house or come running past your street in tanks and try to take over your house or your town, give me a logical reason. Give me a real use for having an AR-15. Now remember, I asked a very specific question of all of you. I don't want to get into a discussion about the Second Amendment. We've been there, done that. We know that it was written 300 years ago by people who never imagined that their neighbors would turn their guns on the community. Walk into the local schoolhouse, walk into the local saloon, and start shooting up their neighbors. That's not why it was written. It was written back at a time where you had to protect livestock from wild animals like coyotes, wolves, bears, from eating your cattle that you counted on to eat, to live. That's why it was written. To protect against invaders from England and France. Well, I don't think we got to worry about that anytime soon, especially since the French Prime Minister and his wife are at the White House right now having a lovely visit with our president and his wife. Give me a logical reason and a real use other than killing people for an AR-15. If you're a sports shooter and it works for you, you like to go target shooting with an AR-15, let me know. I really do want to hear your comments on this one. I want to know a real life 2018 practical use other than murdering other human beings for an AR-15. I can't wait to hear those comments. And once again, I think we should all be banding together for one goal, and that is to make sure the father of this shooter is charged as an accessory and even possibly an accomplice for giving his son the weapons he used to murder innocent people that this man had never met. This was totally random. Remember that. And please, if you can't agree with me on anything else, agree with me on that. Political Paula, out.